Would you leave your American lifestyle, move to a beach town in Mexico, and start your own business? My friend Jesse did just that. Here we go. Welcome to the Forget About Money podcast, where we encourage you to take action today so that you can focus on what matters most to you. Today, my friend Jesse and I are going to be discussing what it's like to start a business outside of the U.S., what it's like to live in a low cost of living area, and factors to consider when you have enough money. Do you continue to work or do you go ahead and retire? Welcome, Jesse.
Hey, thanks, David. I'm excited to be here. Good to connect. Yeah, we've known each other for a few years, and it's been great. I actually stayed in contact. A lot of folks come and go and don't follow up, but you did. I appreciate that. Happy to talk about my FI path and what I'm doing, my journey, and it's more exciting because some people think it's exciting because I'm living south of the border, and trying to find ways to be happy every day.
What inspired you to start a business outside of the United States?
What inspired me to start a business outside of the United States? Well, you could call it desperation or confusion. I was at a place leaving my previous kind of career track in financial consulting and international traveling. And I was in recovery from a medical situation where I wasn't going to be traveling. So I started doing massage. And I did a training course in that and started giving massages. And I really enjoyed it, actually. It brought me a lot of personal peace, something I had struggled with in my 20s, a lot of anxiety. And I decided just to keep doing it. And little by little, that became the more focus of my time and my income. Since I was living in Baja, Mexico, I didn't have high requirements for income. And also, it's kind of the tail end of the Great Recession. So my other job opportunities were not so great. And then eventually, I would say that, in terms of starting a business is when I started having other people work with me and for me. That was kind of a natural growth process of just realizing, hey, I love doing this, but it's kind of physically exhausting. And it's like a cool lifestyle, but not something I can ever travel on or accumulate savings. And I'm a little fearful. Got to have some savings. So
now you set up shop in Ensenada, in Baja California, Mexico. Why did you select that location? Had you been to Mexico before?
Great question, David. I would like to tell everybody that I was spinning the world and went through a detailed list of all my needs and my future desires and picked the best spot for myself. But that is not the case. I had been living nearby, kind of waiting for another job to open up in my previous profession as an economic consultant. And, I had some things happen. I like to say it makes a kind of a cliche country song or a great blues song. So I had a relationship end. I was about 29, 30. I was probably codependent emotionally, so I was pretty broken up. It was like a 3.5-year one. I had fostered a dog and gave it away to be adopted, and the dog came back. And I was like, I got to adopt this dog. So I had a new dog, so I wasn't going to be traveling. And like a month later, I got a diagnosis of a tumor. I had testicular cancer. So that kind of shook me up psychologically. Even the idea of like, I could die, like a small percent, but that kind of shifts your thinking. I had the tumor taken out, so it wasn't a big deal physically, but I needed to recover and make sure I didn't have any complications. So I thought, I'm going to go to a little bit bigger city where I can just chill out for the rest of the recession, take care of my dog, and take care of myself. So I went to Ensenada.
So can you describe what it was like to actually move to Ensenada and then how you started your business?
Sure. The moving to Ensenada, I guess, was the first process as I was just coming off of the tumor removal, having the dog. I was single, so pretty much I was living just 45 minutes north of there, already in Baja, California, Mexico. So I threw my stuff in my blue Ford Ranger at the time, my pickup truck. I loved that truck. And drove it down. At that time, I found somebody on couch surfing and shared a house, paid for a room in a house, and started to get settled socially. And essentially, that was the process for moving there. There wasn't a lot more to it because I was already in Mexico. And at that time, there wasn't much hassle around having visas or worrying about immigration stuff.
How did you transition from living on someone's couch to actually opening up your own massage parlor? Is that the right term for it?
Yeah, I don't think terms matter too much. You call it massage parlor, massage studio is usually what I say. Sometimes for marketing, I should say spa because people search for spa. Yeah, so couch surfing, I met somebody, it was through the couch surfing community and they had a room for rent. At that time, couch surfers were open, like a cool community of people looking for international travelers, and that was me. And then from there, I ended up getting my own apartment, which was cool. I was like 30 and like, I could have my own apartment with my dog. It was a 2-bedroom apartment, but just a simple thing. Living previously in big cities, San Diego, Washington, D.C., having your own place was like awesome. Then I started doing massage and actually started doing massage in the second bedroom of that apartment, just myself. And it was probably 2 years later. A year later, so I transitioned to a different place where I had a little more space. And then there were some problems with that one. I transitioned into more of an office space that was separated where I was doing massage from I was living. So then I had an independent place, and from there I grew into doing couples massages, getting other therapists involved. Fast forward 5 years, I got to build a website. I got to get other people, and then really with COVID a few years ago, brought in a manager to make it a business, or I didn't have to do everything, answering every phone call and every email. So that was the course of, it's been like 13, 14 years now.
And over that 13 or 14 years, what kind of cultural influences either positively or negatively impacted your experience as starting a business outside the United States?
Well, I'd never formally started a business in the U.S. before. I had worked, as a kid mowing lawns. I was pretty entrepreneurial in that, reselling candy in the lunch lot. And I did, some consulting things in my graduate school program. So I had to write consulting proposals, but not really starting a business in the U.S. at least. So in Mexico, it was kind of a new thing, and I can't say that I was a natural born entrepreneur. I kind of liked school. I did well in the formal environment. I got all my pats on the back and good grades from that. So in terms of things that I noticed building the business that I imagine would be different in the U.S. Understanding the mindset of a client, a Latino or Mexican thinks a little bit differently in terms of how they value massage or the things they're looking for in terms of price points, different attitudes about the therapist gender. As a male therapist, there was a little bit of skepticism that I was doing professional massage at the time. This was like 13 years ago. I noticed that. Communication, the way it worked out, people in Mexico didn't get texting free until after the US. So everybody was all about Facebook Messenger. Like nobody would text. So it was all on Facebook Messenger at the time. So differences and preferences for communication. And then it was WhatsApp. They got WhatsApp way before the US in terms of higher adoption rates. So everybody wanted to communicate through that. Other small things, there's this stereotypical discussion around how different cultures treat time. Yeah, there's a different way of approaching appointments, the importance of keeping an appointment, how stressed out people are about being late and such. So that was, there were some lessons around that for sure, and how I decided to structure the business. Sometimes I did attempt to make more formal partnerships with Mexican businesses, hotels, and other spas, as well as working with a university where I was teaching before doing massage full time. And there were some lessons around how those relationships work, what the important parts are in terms of trust or being friendly, the importance of communication and clarity. Yeah, being vague, but just, lots of lessons in any cultural situation where you're doing things. I think the key thought that emerges, and this includes also different times that I developed deeper relationships because I was dating at that time in my 30s. A lot of the, hidden assumptions on how we conduct life, relationships, business, and what we expect of other people, they're not always well articulated. And when you and somebody else have different hidden assumptions and act in different ways, it leads one person to get pretty upset or confused. And it's really a lot of emotional work to untangle, like, well, what were you expecting? And okay. So finding out those different ways of doing things to meet people's expectations or set them correctly, and then not get upset about it.
So you've been in Mexico for over 10 years now. A common concern is that Americans go down to Mexico and then either diminish the natural beauty or don't take care of it or don't respect the culture. And part of that is when Americans move to like Tijuana or other places, the prices of things increase due to gentrification. What are your experiences and thoughts on that in the Ensenada area where you work?
Yeah. Okay. So sure, there has been, there's always been a lot of people in Baja from California. It's super common to talk to people about their surf trips there. In Baja, particularly Baja Sur, is amazing for RV trips, camping. The nature aspect is gorgeous, especially further down in Baja. Ensenada is just 2 hours south of San Diego. So we're not really that far down. Baja is super long. It's like 21 hours to drive down all the way to Cabo. So yeah, my perspective living there on like how tourism, particularly U.S. and tourism, affects it. Sure, there is some aspect of I guess from the worst end is like the party crowd. Yeah, people come across the border just to party. There's lower drinking age, the weekend away. And it's a natural thing when you're traveling outside your hometown. Everybody thinks, ooh, nobody knows me here. I can act crazy. So yeah, some people overdrink and do dumb stuff. I see it on the cruise boats, and sometimes folks get their party on. And the businesses are set up for that. They want to sell the alcohol, so it encourages that. If that's your only experience of people from the U.S., you probably think we're a bunch of lazy party fools. In the same way, I came from Wisconsin. My most frequent experience of Mexicans was working in the restaurants where I was a waiter. Of course, that's a very narrow view. Mexico is wide, and there's super a variety of people, income levels, education levels. There's tons of people, way more living better lives and way more educated than me, and it's just an amazing place. The same in the U.S. There's such a diversity, and sometimes you only see the party crowd, so it does look a little silly if you're taking your perspective from the papas and beer. In terms of living in the U.S. In Mexico, yeah, retirees is a common thing. Always been happening in Mexico, and my experience when I moved there was most of the folks who moved down, they're in the second half of their lives. They had their relationships set up, their money made for the most part. So for comfort or just enjoy life, they kind of group together in retirement communities. There's a place called Punta Banda out by the Bufadora. Really amazing place, great beaches. So yeah, folks live out there. Or in Baja or other places, gated communities. And that's cool. It's safe and it's totally tranquil. I had a different experience since I was about 30. So I was looking to, I guess, build life, a business, income, relationships, and hang out. So I was pretty much in town, and I wasn't really around a lot of expats per se. Plenty of people speak English and have international travel experience, but not a lot of retired folks around where I was for those 10 years. And still where I'm living is not kind of in that hot spot. Yes, there has been a little bit of an uptick around before COVID and with COVID, people working remotely because of the ability to, as well as improved internet access everywhere. So yeah, it's more of a lifestyle choice, people doing that. Also, yeah, I think the big factor is if people really want to, make the effort to get over the language barrier, enmesh themselves in local life. You don't have to. You can live in your own little bubble, like we all do, of course, in our own bubbles. You can live in an expat immigrant bubble. In terms of respecting nature, I'd say it's that there is there is the view occasionally. Ensenada is famous for the Baja 1000, the Baja 500, and Nora, these other the dirt bikes and things. Amazing, fun vehicles. But yeah, they do go through nature, through the desert, and kind of tear stuff up. At the same time, they bring a lot of tourism money, and they also make big efforts to clean up after themselves and respect as much as they can. It's not really my thing, but it is a lot of fun. I see people have a ton of fun, working on the cars, getting excited and doing it. Sure, there's development around Baja and everywhere, just like there's development in parts of the U.S. Money drives development, and it's always sad to see change. Change is part of life. I like everything to stay small, but that's how it goes. And the good stuff, people come and pay for it, and prices go up. Prices have gone up in Mexico. I haven't seen quite the inflation spike that I've seen up here in Southern California, but I wouldn't say that I've heard a lot or seen a lot of people who are, at least around Ensenada, upset about particularly U.S. immigrants driving up prices and things.
With many entrepreneurs working from home, like from a laptop, and that they're able to move outside the United States and live a nomadic lifestyle, I know Baja California is a place where many people go that want to live that lifestyle. In general, though, what kind of advice would you give an entrepreneur who wants to start a business outside the United States?
Well, I guess my experience or perspective in my case study of me, if you're doing a digital online thing, that's amazing. And of course you can do that from anywhere. This idea or the reality or myth of the digital nomad. And I would say to that, if I had any advice to give, but is to also consider your life as an ecosystem. Yeah, you might be able to live someplace and work cheaply on in a cafe with in front of a tree. But you also probably as a person have social needs. You want to have a community at some point. You may want to, hear great music, be involved in, a sports team or other things. So that might be something where you're always moving from one place to another. And if you're starting a business, of course, of other kinds that, requires stuff to happen, you're shipping stuff, you got people to make things happen like a services business. My case study of one has been that, the hardest part of business is the people, the people that work with you. So maintaining those good relationships, learning how to do that, and then finding people that will come to work and do the work. When I talk to my friends in the U.S. who have small businesses, that's a big challenge, finding and keeping good people, any place you're at. So whether it's in Mexico or someplace else, if you got the kind of business that involves people, doing that, treating them well, if you're able to develop training or whatever it takes, because when they come and go, the whole thing gets more difficult and less fun. For sure. The Mexican financial system is a little different, banking and taxes, but there's taxes. You learn it. It's a bureaucracy. You pay taxes pretty much wherever you go. I do feel like in the early days, I had less, paperwork and bureaucracy than I would have had here in California. For example, my development as a massage therapist, I was already living in Mexico, so I did trainings there. And I actually did trainings in Mexico. I did trainings in India, in Turkey, and then in California, these intense workshops, the Pain Science Summit, and then a lot of mentorship and apprenticeship. But I didn't do a licensed massage therapist. LMT is one of the things that is required in Mexico and some parts of the U.S. I was able to piece together what really worked for me for learning and not just get the piece of paper that I was required to for the registration. At the same time, the first few years, I didn't have the business registration and all the insurance forms and all the things signed and dated and dotted, and things that I think are a little bit more required here in the U.S. So that was an advantage at the time. Of course, since then I've formalized and got all that stuff in place as the business grew. But it was easier in the beginning to not have those startup costs as well as distractions, of endless paperwork and stuff.
You recently started renting a place here in San Diego, and the price of living or the cost of living here in San Diego is ridiculous by any measure. especially when compared to what it costs to live in Ensenada. What are some of the benefits of living in a low cost of living area?
Great question. Some of the benefits of living in a low cost area, this geographic arbitrage, is that what we call it in the FI community? There is a sense of like you can hit a luxury and not worry about it. For most of my life, I go to a restaurant. The first thing I do is look at the prices and the menu. What's going to fit my budget and what's going to fit what I'm hungry for today and my health choices, diet, whatever. I don't really do that so much anymore. I occasionally I go a place and it feels nice, and I don't sweat about how much it's going to cost, because I guess the luxury price point where I'm at is so much less than the luxury price point, in Southern California or California in general. So that does feel good. That occasionally I can splurge and I don't feel sweat about it. I don't got to save up for it, and that means I can also be generous and treat other people. I found that generosity actually it brings me a lot of joy, being nice and giving, because, I come from the Midwest and a real coupon clipping, living below your means kind of attitude. And, anytime somebody bought something for me, it was like, oh man, that's great. I'm getting something for a gift or for free. So yeah, that's a nice thing. A lower cost of living area. I felt like I kept a pretty tight budget. For a lot of my time there building the business. I generally knew my expenses, but I really wasn't like running mint on my finances and, monthly things. Checking out all these little details. Another couple benefits that aren't so obvious. Often in lower cost living area, whether it's a rural Wisconsin or any other place in the U.S. Or developing country, usually there are fewer choices. There's less money there to demand a variety of choices and services. For example, I got my dog's nails clipped. It was actually a really amazing service. They hoisted her up and like trimmed her nails, and because for me to do it, it's like a fight. But like that's not an option in Ensenada. There's like nobody that has a great service for that. So I'm definitely not spending on that because it's not even an option. But there's this psychological principle too. Many people are familiar with it. When you get a lot of choices, you're just overwhelmed. Like in Ensenada, I think there's maybe like 3, maybe there's 5 Asian restaurants. So like that's your choices. Like, you could spend an hour like debating with your friends. Hey, where do you want to get sushi? So I don't end up wasting time on like a lot of option choices. From everything from buying in the store to restaurants, there's fewer choices, but that doesn't really diminish my happiness, and like gives me back time. Another couple things. So of course, labor is the big difference. Things that are tradable, electronics, a car, really not that much different driving across the border. It's the services, the mechanic, the maid. Maybe some like the waiter, the wait staff, the embedded services. Having a maid has been amazing for me because I don't really clean that well. I don't really like it. So I pay somebody to clean my place and I don't sweat it. And I got to say that's like a big benefit. Other benefits, there is this funny thing, for me at least, a foreign currency kind of doesn't feel real. You're spending a 20 peso bill. I don't think I got any with me right now, but it kind of feels like a little bit like you're spending lottery money. So, sometimes when you're handing somebody $100 bill, it's like, oh, it's $100. You got to pry it out of my hand. Like, hey, here's 20 pesos. It's blue. It's different. It feels more fun, I guess. It's a small thing. Other benefits of living in a low cost of areas. Yeah. So bigger asset things like, a house. I could look at houses, and I have looked at houses. So that was like more within my reach, as well as renting things that are maybe able to get more what I wanted, closer to the beach or away from city traffic. Things that are quality of life that you might be willing to pay for if it's not too much.
You mentioned housing. I know where we're sitting right now. This is a room in a house that I rent, and I rent for $3,300 a month. What are some typical housing costs in Ensenadas and maybe other places in Mexico that you're familiar with?
Sure. I'm definitely not a expert on all of Mexico. In general, there are places that are much less expensive than Ensenada. I think Mexicans will tell you that, or people that are more in the know have this traveled Mexico and get a sense that we're close to the border. So the border proximity kind of even pushes up prices in Ensenada. People can do long commutes and work in the U.S., definitely from Tijuana and Rosarito. It's 2 hour down to Ensenada, so not a lot. I don't think anybody's really doing daily commutes, but that flow of money does drive up prices a little bit. So I rent a 2-bedroom place, got a fenced in yard, and I think I'm at like $875. I got a tiny ocean view from like one part of my patio, and it's got space for my dogs outside. So that works for me. There are definitely things that are a lot less expensive. Things that have smaller windows, just the way the construction is. I'm in a manufactured home, and it's private piece of land, not in an apartment unit. You get closer to the ocean, definitely you can pay more. And there's some really nice places too. I am not enough of in the know on like real estate because it varies so much from place to place. But I'm in a city, Ensenada is a 600,000 people or so a city, depending on how you count it. Access to city stuff, not out in a small town where it would be probably way less, but not someplace I'm ready to live.
In my elementary research, I think you can get a house for very close to the beach in Ensenada for maybe like 200,000. And here in San Diego, I don't know exactly, but I think a few months ago, the median or average, I don't know if it's median or average, but we're looking at like 700,000, 800,000 for the average price of a home here in San Diego. That's not near the beach. If you were near the beach, it would be way more by multiples. So I think that could also be a huge draw for Americans who are tired of high cost of living areas and who just want to maybe get away for a while. So you started your business, but that's not the first time you've thought entrepreneurially. In previous discussions that you and I have had, you have some formal finance management background, and you took some other courses, and your own personal endeavors included passion for finance management. So you were probably already on your way to financial independence through your business and maybe some other means. A few years ago, you got a windfall of money that changed that. Can you describe what your path was to financial independence before that windfall and how that windfall affected your outlook on achieving financial independence?
Thanks, David. Yeah, just to touch on that previous question real quick. Yeah, I think places near the beach, yeah, you'd be like 300 to 400,000 because they're going to build nicer places near the beach or near the ocean in Ensenada. The couple of caveats that I learned when I was kind of looking around. One of the awesome things is that the cost of owning a home, like the ongoing costs, I think are a lot lower in Mexico because of insurance stuff. The typical concrete block building material is pretty low maintenance. You may not love its thermal qualities, but pretty low maintenance. And like property taxes are very different as well. So that can be a really nice aspect for long-term ownership costs on a home. You asked about, my path. So I'm now, I guess, an entrepreneur. I have several different businesses. The Ensenada massage that I started when I was doing massage therapy. And now I've got like 15 part-time massage therapists that do great. I work a lot on the cruise boat, so I've found my niche there in terms of clients and weekend travelers down. We go out and do mobile massage into the Valle de Guadalupe, this famous wine region by Ensenada. Like 85% of wine is made there in Mexico. Amazing hotels and things. We do that, call that Valle Mobile Spa. And then we do excursions and tours, mostly for folks on the cruise boat, but anybody's in town. So that's Ensenada Excursions and Tours. I was definitely not creative in my business names, but I ended up with, I guess, 3 businesses. I got 3 websites. But no, I was totally happy just getting good grades in school and then working for a manager who said that great job. And I was in a consulting position in Washington, D.C., and doing the numbers, the spreadsheets, and working with, some really cool people, but looking at my paycheck every week and wondering, okay, how can I get a raise in like a year? I get that one quarterly bonus where I had no control of my income, almost no control, like even like the stuff in my office or the lights, or when I could take my lunch break. So that was very different. Yeah, now I think the big difference there was just I really didn't at that time, and I still am working on the emotional risk taking and the decision making that's constant for entrepreneurs. You never know what's the right thing to do, and making a lot of mistakes along the way. In terms of my financial path, I did get started pretty early. I was lucky. I had a grandfather who read the Wall Street Journal almost every day. He came from a background, at least my American story was that, he came from the middle of the country, Kentucky and the Tennessee area, and didn't have a very good education through the fifth grade. He saw for his family that the stock market was a great thing. And of course, we had this amazing bull run. So he was reading the Wall Street Journal and picking out his stock. He'd have his stock and he'd watch it. And when it went down, he'd buy it. He was a buy and holder. So that got me interested in it. And then when I was in high school and then starting college, I started common stock clubs. I forgot they were called, but actually having the green sheets where you're doing fundamental analysis, graphing out earnings per share. I wouldn't say I was an entrepreneur, but I was like, I was in the numbers and like the idea of money and saving. So yeah, I definitely had this idea of saving for the future. I don't think I had the idea of financial independence because I didn't know how, what adult life was like and the requirements of work and the obligations of stuff and having to have time or money to enjoy life and more so. And then, I did get lucky in undergraduate. There was a little club, the Financial Portfolio Club, I'll say real quick. And we were like picking stocks, fake portfolios. We're college kids. And it was the tech bubble. So, hey, we picked this thing and it was great. And that was kind of had me thinking a lot all along. And I was all into like saving when I got my first job, really was maxing out my 401k. I was starting to put money into a Roth when I was in my early 20s. That took kind of like a 10-year break when I'm like, didn't like that job. Let's try grad school. Let's travel around Central America for a few years with some consulting income. So that wasn't really happening in terms of disciplined investing over those years, but I was aware of it. And also was keeping my expenses low as well. Now, your question was about, you asked about my path to financial independence or financial ease in some ways. When I was in Mexico and settled in Ensenada, it was the post-Great Recession. I just had a tumor taken out. I was alone with my dog. I didn't have a lot to do for work, and I was counting my pesos. I was doing massage for $25 an hour out of the second bedroom of my apartment. Yes, I had a graduate degree in economics and finance, but I had kind of left that identity behind. The consulting stuff was just too stressful. After the tumor, and then getting the dog, new path. I had no idea what I was doing, but eventually, knew I had to pay my bills, and so I was disciplined about keeping expenses low and making money. And I learned with a business where you can control your income. Kinda. You got to work harder. You got to advertise more. You got to do this. You got to raise your prices. So that was kind of nice to feel like I could do something and see a result. Because honestly, before I'd write these statistical programming SAS or these Excel spreadsheets or write an economic report, and somebody might read it a month later. And then sometimes I get paid 6 months later. Not immediate feedback. But with massage and having your own business, good feedback quickly. So from there, the way it went for me is I did have a lot of alone time. I was kind of a lonely guy because it was a new foreign environment, but I was saving disciplined. And I came across Early Retirement Extreme. I'm sure you've heard of that. Jacob Slund. Yes, yeah. Amazing book. And, I just come out of graduate school a few years earlier, so I was into reading and thinking. And he was perfect because he writes in a super academic way, no illustrations in his book, graphs and these crazy theories. But I was into it. I'm live on 30% or less of my income, save the rest. So I was doing that. every week I was depositing into my account. I wasn't smart enough to do it automatic. I was manually like moving money from one account to another. I had kind of like my path tracked out. I'm like, all right, I know my budget. And you asked earlier, living in Mexico at that time, like my financial nut as a single guy with a dog, I felt like I was living pretty large on $2,400 a month. And I'm like, all right, that's what I need. I'm living good and I'm saving the rest. That's what I was doing. And little by little, I was also building my business. That was a process, extra therapists, getting better marketing, and finding the right clients. I figured I was just going to keep doing that. I wasn't like the happiest guy in the world, but I was doing my thing. I could control my business. I could say, all right, you know what? It looks like 5-6 years, I'll have my number where I can live on this $2,400 a month pretty good and not stress. So I had it in my mind. I'm like, all right, I'm going to keep doing this. I think it was, I had 4 or 5 years left in my time horizon. I didn't really have a plan what I was going to do, but that was the thing, right? You like get your number, like, all right, that's what I'm working for. Then I'll really have options. And then, I had a change in my family situation. I had kind of a windfall. So I suddenly had more options, but yet I was still on this path to, be financially independent in Mexico, meaning at, local costs there. So it took me some time to really digest like that I had more options. And of course, this happened just before COVID too. So we all went through amazing, massive, terrible changes with COVID. For me, some of the things that have changed or the choices that I've made to keep working. I put my time into this business and I found ways to make it more enjoyable to do I guess you could say outsource the stuff I don't like doing as much, try and treat my people better so they're happier. So it's more fun for me. And then also know that I'm not milking it for every penny or every peso. I'm having fun with it, trying as much as you can. And I've got a little bit better managers in place, or I actually have managers in place now. So I can travel a little more independently from the business. So I feel like I'm a real business owner now, whereas before I was really a slave to the business. Honestly, every time I was away, I was checking my phone. Oh, I'm missing an appointment. Every time I'd go and see friends, I'd be like, I'm losing money because I'm not there doing it. It's also given me some other choices in terms of being present for family, for medical situations. My father went through a traumatic medical situation and passed away, and I was able to be there for that. My mother's had some medical changes, so I've really been giving her a lot of my time and care and attention, doing a lot of medical things with her, which has been amazingly meaningful to me. But at the same time, I'll be honest with you, like 10 years ago when I was saving for my nut, and retire, my vision was not doing medical things with family and taking care of a dog that's like on his last legs. But yet I find that that's probably more meaningful, and I'm super happy I'm able to do that. And it would be less possible or way more stressful, at least, if I didn't have, the financial comfort. And I probably would need a lot less than I have, but it's also my psychological, like, all right, I'm good. Also, it works for my lifestyle. I've also, one of the things I've encountered, I have an amazing girlfriend, a great partner. She's still on her path, so she's in a 40, 50 hour a week thing. So I'm like, all right, this is a great fit for me relationship, but there's also a time thing. So, hey, I got time to work too.
If you knew you were going to get a windfall, how would that have changed the last 10 years of your life as an entrepreneur or in your personal financial life, if at all?
So if I knew I was going to get a windfall, would that have changed, or how that would have changed things for me? Well, I may have made a few different capital investment decisions. My businesses, I don't use a lot of capital in them. So, and also maybe now in my more maturity as a business owner, I can see, I could have made that business investment, bought the building that I was working in, and 10 years later, it'd be like a huge asset. Or maybe invested in higher quality, maybe a website. Things I would have done differently personally. I may have taken a little bit more time to invest in like my own personal development. Like I play blues harmonica, so if I had taken a little bit more time off to be with, some guys I used to play music with. Unfortunately, he passed with COVID, but I had an amazing group of like guys I could jam with. That was such a great learning experience and just joyful for me. And I relegated it to like one afternoon every other week, probably. I probably would have traveled a little bit more to do the things like harmonica training, retreats, and I may have paid a little bit more for like, personal coaches or things, for whether it was fitness or music. Yeah, I did a lot of cool stuff. I may have done it a little bit nicer, like when I went to India to study for massage and yoga. Maybe I would have stayed in a little bit nicer place, or paid for the smaller class, more private lessons rather than the group class. I probably would have been more generous with people around me. I think in general, I've always taken a lot of fun time for myself. Got scuba dive training, living in Guatemala, working just after graduate school. In retrospect, a lot of fun. At the time, I felt like I was being serious and adult, and it was, but compared to other options I would have done if I'd stayed in the States or stayed in a cubicle doing the consulting job, building my 401k, I had a pretty amazing experiences. Other things I would have done differently, I think I would have invested probably in better kitchen and food stuff. My personal health is really important to me, and there's always a little bit of tug and pull in like the quality of ingredients and like kitchen appliances and stuff. And when you're renting, every time you move, a lot of times you got to upgrade stoves and pans and stuff. And yeah, I would have splurged a little bit more on that kind of stuff that gives me, daily enjoyment.
So in your future, we're going to see a culinary expert, massage therapist, retreat enthusiast, harmonica pro. Maybe you're going to start your own band. Well, I look forward to seeing what the next 10 years brings you. Before this conversation, I didn't know a lot of those details that you shared today. So thank you very much for sharing all of that. And thank you for being a friend. Thanks for always reaching out and trying to have conversations and meeting up and continuing to have connection. And you're right. It seems like the older that you get and the faster pace the world is, those connections dwindle. Thank you for prioritizing that. And thank you for being on the show.
Hey, you're welcome, David. It's a lot of fun. Don't get to be on a podcast very often. One final piece of advice, sometimes people look for tips. I'm still on my financial independence or just journey of life. Two things I will say. One, it is true that, getting a windfall doesn't really make you instantly that much happier. I still have up days and down days. I still work really hard just to take care of myself, so I feel good, have good energy, sleeping well. I have a little more choices on how to do that and make it easier. The game of being happy is really independent in a lot of ways from what's in your bank account. And there's no reason to delay building a happier life. Also, one thing that was really helpful for me in like the saving process, because I really didn't have a community. I came into like the early retirement extreme by myself, alone. Eventually found Mr. Money Mustache, and great. Everybody's heard of him and the community. But just saving by yourself, you can get excited about putting numbers into an account, moving them from here to there. But what was really awesome for me was when I made savings accounts that had like what they were for. Like, all right, this is saving for the trip to Cancun. This account is saving for the harmonica retreat next June. And like, that was like super meaningful, moving money there, because just vaguely throwing money into a huge pile for some future like thing, it didn't do it for me for a lot. But that was one thing that really helped me out. Thank you also for having me. I appreciate the friendship and the connection, because, and just keeping life happy, connections are really important, and that's a really valuable thing. Appreciate that.
Well, thank you again, Jesse, and thank you all for watching and listening.